We open the door, invite data centers to come in, and then all of a sudden people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And my concern is if we suddenly put all these additional restrictions, regulations on these data centers, they're just going to go somewhere else. And it's a global market. I am with Dan Diorio from the Data Center Coalition. As you know, in Indiana County, we have proposed data centers coming currently right now through Homer City redevelopment. They are starting the construction of a 4.5 gigawatt natural gas-fired electric generation plant. As of right now, that is all that is on the books. The data centers are still proposed, but the ultimate plan is to create the power plant, not only to energize the data centers, but also to put power back into the grid, much needed power back into the grid. But there are some local concerns because data centers are new to our area, relatively new to Pennsylvania. And so that's what I would like to talk a little bit about today. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us, Dan. Your area of expertise is something that I think most people in Pennsylvania will find very interesting right now. So just give us an overview of what data centers are and the different types that are proposed. For Homer City, they're looking at the big ones, you know, and so just kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having me. This is a tremendous opportunity for Pennsylvania. And from the data center industry perspective, we want to be the best partner we can be in the Commonwealth. And that means having conversations like this where we can really get down to the facts. You know, data centers are everything that we do every day. It's how we work. It's how we learn. It's how we communicate. It is every online purchase, every telehealth appointment, every online classroom, every electronic healthcare record, 911 geolocation services, state and local governments, you name it. Mm-hmm. It's the backbone of the 21st century economy. When we think about the average of 21 connected devices that an individual has in their home, it's our laptops and our phones, our smart watches, smart TVs, Nest thermostats, Ring doorbells, garage doors, lights. My oven's connected to Wi-Fi. I can preheat it from here if I wanted to. All of that requires digital infrastructure. So it's an essential component of what we do every day. And I think there's a perception that data centers are all AI all the time, and that really couldn't be further from the case. AI is less than a quarter of current compute out there. The vast majority of data centers being built today are for cloud. And cloud is the underpinning of all those devices that we rely on, all of that commerce that we rely on every day. I think of the Visa data center. They're a member of ours. They have a data center in Northern Virginia. 31,000 credit card transactions a second in Northern Virginia. So we're all swiping quite a bit these days, whether it be online or in person. And so that really requires digital infrastructure. And when we look even more broadly, digital infrastructure is an essential component of the U.S.'s global economic competitiveness. We have to keep pace with other countries that are building out both digital infrastructure and energy infrastructure very, very quickly. And I think as we look back here in Pennsylvania, this is our data. This is our banking data. This is our healthcare data. We want it stored here, and we want it stored in the Commonwealth for the people of Pennsylvania.
So talk a little bit about why Pennsylvania. What makes Pennsylvania a good place for data centers?
Well, I think first and foremost, Pennsylvania has a long commitment to energy and to both generating energy and developing energy infrastructure. And I think that has a lot of certainty, that provides a lot of certainty for the industry for how it can develop in the state when the state has a commitment to putting that energy on the grid for economic development. Pennsylvania has a great workforce. We need the skilled trades. We need electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters, steam fitters, HVAC technicians to build our data centers, but also to maintain them when they're up and operational. So Pennsylvania's history of just a really great skilled trade workforce is a tremendous asset to the state. There's land, there's access to fiber infrastructure, and there's a good tax and regulatory climate. All of that is helping Pennsylvania to emerge as one of the strongest and fastest growing markets in the country.
So talk about some numbers, the economic impact of data centers and the long-term jobs that will continue after the construction.
Yeah, that's right. You know, construction jobs are really important for data centers. But what we see is that these jobs turn into long-term positions. I always encourage any member to go up to any member of the building trades and say, oh, your job is temporary, and see what kind of reaction you get. And we see crews contracted for the long term. We see them contracted for multiple sites, for multiple buildings turns into a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year job, and there are folks that make careers off that. But when data centers are up and operational, we need that steady supply of local electricians, local plumbers, local HVAC technicians coming from the community, living in that community, small business individuals to small businessmen and women to work on those facilities. You have to swap components out. You have to maintain them. If a component goes out or shorts out and the electricity use is in flux at the facility, we need someone to come in there and be skilled and highly trained to be able to work on that. Data centers create strong business ecosystems. Every one job in a data center supports 6 jobs elsewhere in the economy. It's service industries. It's manufacturing. You have to build everything that goes into the data center, steel fabrication, you name it. But I think what's really important is that as the industry looks to the future, the industry is focused on developing the workforce of the future. We have a workforce pipeline concern right now that we're not going to have enough of the skilled trades to be able to build and service our facilities in the future. So how do we create those pathways that don't take a 4-year degree into a really good paying job in the data center industry? And that's what the industry is heavily investing in, working with the trade groups now, getting them the most up-to-date technology, improving apprenticeship programs, but also just working with community colleges and technical schools. Here's the curriculum that you can provide so that individuals in the community can go through this program, come out, make a really good paying job in the data center industry.
What kind of numbers as far as jobs that are directly employed by a data center?
Yeah. So we see there's, if you have a larger data center for a hyperscaler, you'll see about probably upwards of 200 jobs, at that facility, and even larger. That's probably even per building, on a campus style. They're multi-tenant data centers, so they lease out space. So they may have 50 employees for them, but their individual tenants have their own employees that badge in and out of that building every day. And so if you go to any data center parking lot, you'll find it full. These are buildings where people work. They are there. We need the human capital to be able to make sure those buildings are running and operating. And what we see in Pennsylvania is when we take in both the direct and indirect jobs, we see almost 100,000 jobs supported by the data center industry. And that was in 2023. It's only gone up from there.
That's incredible. And I think it's such a tremendous opportunity for Pennsylvania, and I think we want to be certain that we capitalize on that. But there are some concerns, and in my view, unjustified, simply because people don't know. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about some of those things related to noise, water, those types of things.
Yeah. Well, let's start with water. So data centers are amongst the most efficient water users in the economy. We use less water than semiconductor manufacturing, than food and beverage production. We use less water than what's lost to water leaks in water systems throughout the U.S. on an annual basis. In a place like Arizona, top 5 market in the country, not exactly known for having a lot of water.
Right.
It's a desert. We use less water than golf courses in the state of Arizona. So the context is important to understanding data center water use. This is an industry that prides itself on efficient use of resources and conserving resources. And it's been deploying for years water efficient technologies. They're not new. They're not novel. They've been deployed. They're in designs right now. And so the industry continues to push the bounds of water efficiency. Some of those numbers that we see out there are misperceptions, or they're the worst of the worst case scenario, because you permit for that. Right. But data centers, continue to be an efficient water user on a daily basis. And then, if we jump into, if that's okay, I'll just jump.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Let's jump into something like noise or sound. We know from studies out of Virginia, the largest market in the world, that data centers don't have a noise issue there. That they're not noisier than any other type of building of that size, and that in fact there are a lot of other noisier things going on in and around a data center. But that being said, what the industry does is they work closely with the local officials. What are the local noise ordinances that we have to be sure to follow? Do we need to do noise studies or sound studies on the front end to ensure that we're following those? How do we implement sound mitigation measures into our designs to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward on that? But then lastly, how do we be a responsive partner in the community? And that means that if there is a noise concern when the data center is up and operational, how do we respond to that? Can we respond to that? What can we do to be a good community member? That's what the data center industry prides itself on, is ensuring that it can be responsive to communities.
And I really appreciate that. And I think it's important to note that when these data centers come in, they're not just dumping a building down and leaving. They're going to be part of the community. They're going to give back to the community. And I know you have some examples of that. Can you share some examples of these industries coming in and actually helping the community at large?
Yeah, data centers, they generate significant amounts of revenue for a community. This is revenue that goes into schools and infrastructure and services. But beyond that, you have data centers demonstrating investment in the community itself. So that means what infrastructure does the community need that they can help support, whether it be public safety infrastructure, fire trucks, public safety centers. Are there infrastructure needs, like a new water treatment plant that they can that they can provide the funding for? How can they support community initiatives at schools, STEM programs, fill school budgeting gaps, just beyond the revenue? So the industry is actively doing that in the communities where it locates. It's figuring out what is the best need for the community and how can they help support that. They're tremendous economic engines, tremendous job opportunities and revenue opportunities, but there are also opportunities, and the industry prides itself on being that good community partner and investing in the community beyond just the facility itself.
Yeah, that's excellent to hear. I think that the most people in Pennsylvania, once they truly understand what data centers are and really the minimal impacts they're going to have on water, on noise, the electricity concerns are still out there. But as I like to say, these supply and demand issues were not caused by the data centers. Pennsylvania hasn't invested any money into baseload generation for many, many years. And we're seeing the impacts of that right now, whether it be because of bad policy at the state and federal levels or what have you. But I think we're starting to turn that corner now because people realize that demand is there and we need to have that supply. So when people back home look at their electric bills and think, well, it must be these data centers that aren't even here yet, I think that's really not true. And so my message has been, we need more baseload production to support these data centers that, as you have said, are a great benefit to the Pennsylvania Commonwealth, to our communities, to our economics, to our schools, to our infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we're building the capacity to support that. Now, my other question. It's going to be a little tricky, I think, because and I think there's some knee-jerk reactions happening here in Harrisburg. So we've passed, pretty much on party lines, some bills out of the House that require restrictions, if you will, on these data centers. And my concern is that we open the door, invite data centers to come in, and then all of a sudden people are like, whoa, because they're coming now, and we should be embracing that. And my concern is if we suddenly put all these additional restrictions, regulations on these data centers, they're just going to go somewhere else. And it's a global market, right? These things need to be done, and they need to be implemented quickly. Can you just talk about the timeliness of this and perhaps the impacts of, I would say, misguided legislation?
Absolutely. What's really key for the data center industry, like a lot of other industries, but for data centers in particular, this is billions of dollars in investment. $1 billion is the floor for projects these days. 2 years ago, I would have said, oh, these are $100 million plus projects. These are $1 billion and up, and usually tens of billions of dollars. When you're going to put that much capital in the ground and invest steel in the ground infrastructure, you need to have regulatory certainty and predictability, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in the future. So that's when it presents challenges for the industry. When you're doing your due diligence, looking to invest in a state, and the rules that may change and the entire landscape may change, and you may have the rug pulled out from under you, or you may have a substantial cost put on your plate that you didn't factor into your budget, that really makes it hard to invest. So certainty and predictability is always key. And I think from the data center industry perspective, we don't bury our head in the sand. We know what the public perceptions are right now. And I think we're committed to being that good faith partner to address a lot of these concerns, but keep Pennsylvania open for development. And it really is the key. I kind of like to compare and contrast states, which is we can build it, we will build it, and we can do development, and we can do it the right way. Or we can shut it down, we can say no more, and we can say we can't do it. And I think Pennsylvania is the former. I think Pennsylvania can build it, will do it, and will keep itself open for development. But it's always key to ensure that policies provide that certainty and predictability well into the future, not just in the short term.
Well, I really appreciate that, Dan. I think that at least in Indiana County, we are embracing this opportunity. We see the benefits of it economically already. Just the construction has a lot more people in the community shopping in our stores, dining in our restaurants, staying in our hotels. And I believe if Pennsylvania does it right, we'll see that emulated across this Commonwealth. So I truly appreciate you taking some time to sit down with me and talk through these issues and concerns. But I think overall, the benefits of having data centers in Pennsylvania will be generational and will help us spur our economy into the future.
Well, thank you for your time and thank you for your leadership on this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.